Hello everyone, and welcome to Dutchgreybeard. One of my favorite pastimes is to position myself in front of this TBR bookcase behind me and pick up books. It's almost as if I need to take them out of their slumber every now and then, just to reassure them that their sole purpose, to be read, is not very far away. I leaf through them, smell them, and read a paragraph here and there, which only adds to my eagerness to start reading them sooner rather than later. More than once did I leaf through the 4 books of the legendary Dragonriders of Pern by Anne McCaffrey. Those I bought in December, and to finish the first trilogies in this huge series, I bought another 2 this February. On January 25, I started reading Dragonflight and finished it on February 8. That it took me 2 weeks to read this book of only 347 pages is because at the same time I was reading The Gathering Storm, book 12 in the Wheel of Time. And every time I sat down to read, I chose that one over Dragonflight. If I had only been reading Dragonflight, I would probably have finished it in 2 or 3 days at most. I took it up earlier than anticipated because of some sound advice I got from Nev at Nev's Book Channel. Regarding my plans to start reading Terry Pratchett's Discworld novels in their publication order, he advised me to leaf through Dragonflight first, before picking up The Color of Magic. No person in his right mind ignores Nev's advice. So instead of leafing through it, I read it. Now, having read this first disc novel as well, I'm very glad I did as Nev suggested. The entire part called The Lure of the Worm in Pratchett's book was the part I enjoyed the most, probably because I'd read Dragonflight. So, thank you, Nev. These works by Anne McCaffrey I want to read to gain more understanding of the roots and the way the fantasy genre has developed over the years. Although this series is officially labeled as science fantasy. To me, the background, which tells of how the inhabitants of Pern originate from Earth and that Pern is part of the Rukbat star system, truly is just that, background. It hardly has any bearing on this story. Dragonflight was first published in 1968, but I didn't feel that this book, the prose, or the story were dated. It felt very fresh and new to me. The only indication of the age of this prose was its usage of words that to my non-native ears sound a bit scholarly and prudish. Words like ablutions, pernicious, portentously, or ignominy. And yes, I had to practice their pronunciation before recording this video. The whole series consists of 25 novels, some of which have been written by Anne McCaffrey, some by her son Todd, and some by both. I only have the first 6 on my TBR, which are the original trilogy and the so-called Harper trilogy. There is some haziness about the preferred reading order. This amazes me at times, how poorly publishers help their customers in the best way to approach a series. You almost have to make a study of the different online sources before you can be confident that you have the best reading order possible. One of the websites I visited, which I've linked in the description down below, gives the following reading order, which was suggested by Anne McCaffrey herself. She advises to follow publication order, except for The White Dragon. This one should be read as the 6th book. In Dragonflight, the first novel in this huge series, Anne McCaffrey takes the reader to Pern, a world that's being threatened by threads. What these are becomes clear at the end. They originate from a red planet that every 250 or 300 years or so, which are called turns, passes very closely to Pern. During this pass, which takes about 50 turns, these threads rain down, consuming everything organic they touch. Only the dragons and their dragon riders can disable and neutralize these threads, and thus save the planet from destruction. This story is about how Lessa, becomes involved in the Dragonriders and the saving of their planet. It's a very entertaining story in which the world building in particular stands out to me. I enjoyed this book quite a bit, but it was not love at first sight. The prose is condensed and lots of information is thrown at the reader in artfully composed sentences. It took me fairly long to find my bearing in this story. McCaffrey doesn't explain anything, and she doesn't give the reader much to navigate by. Readers who go in blind are in for a challenge. The role of the harpers remains clouded. What threads are beside a threat is also unclear, as is the purpose of the dragons. In the beginning, this search that some of the Dragonriders are on is a mystery, which also goes for this between people are talking about. The setting, background, rules and habits in this world remain diffuse for a long time. Many of my notations in the margins have to do with trying to understand what this is or that. The only way to become acquainted with this world is to stoically keep on reading. Because of this, I found the first 90 to 100 pages a bit daunting and unclear. One of the things that happens to this reader in such instances is that I'm mainly focused on trying to find my bearing. Nuances in the story or between characters largely passes me by. Perhaps this is why, for this reading experience, I have no quotes to show to you. It's only at page 112 that I write in the margin, "Yes, I'm sold. This is fun and interesting." Also in part 2 of the book, the vagueness is not entirely gone, which irritated me at times. Another element that is not very helpful in this respect is the naming of the characters. All dragon riders have similar kind of names that start with one consonant, followed by an apostrophe and then mostly 3 letters, like Efla or Tibor, Efnor or Argal. You'll figure it out in the end, but certainly at the beginning, this contributes to the overall feeling of being lost. This is my main critique with this book. Other than that, I very much enjoyed it, especially the final quarter of the book, where the story gains speed and very nice ideas about traveling in between places and times are investigated. At page 336 I write, "Very beautiful. It is ingeniously put together. Very good plot. First 200 pages deserve a frown. After that, chapeau." I rate it Dragonflight by Anne McCaffrey 85 out of 100, which compares to a high 4 stars. I will at least be reading the first 2 trilogies in this series. Thank you very much for watching this video. Until we meet again at Dutchgreybeard.